It's this, the one is a very the second sentence is 174% percent growth in the vineyard with irrigation and dredging system, basically VSOP, which is quite impressive. And I don't, and irrigation could double the production, or even more, as is depending on the case and the system that you plant. But it's just so sad that we are gaining so many vineyards in the economic wine production direction, and we are losing at the same time all these old wines potential. I mean, it's something that we have to understand and make some solutions from the government, authorities, and also the consumers.
But I think the problem, isn't it, that the grants, both from the government and I assume also still from the EU, are for higher production vineyards. Really, that they want to encourage people to make more, not less and better. They want to make more and sell more wine effectively. I mean, would that be true that a lot of the grants, local grants and state grants, have been going into encouraging people to use these new varieties?
Yeah, absolutely, and we have many funds and budget to change and to make more modern vineyards. To go to some of the systems, encourage the productions and encourage and improve the economy. But at the same time, there's no any line to make able to keep this heritage. I mean, it's really bad politics behind that.
Yeah. Tim, if it does come in, we've got a really good question that come up from actually Elias, a countryman of yours, Rafa Rizos, who's in Rioja.
Hi, Rafa.
And Rafa makes the point in that, okay, we have restructuring funds, fine, people need to live, communities need to be regenerated, but actually those funds don't have any kind of recognition towards the heritage of old vines and regeneratively cultured vineyards, which actually have all the attributes of high value regenerative agriculture. So I think this is a topic that, for us as an organisation, I know that we've got people here who are within the OIV, which has a lot of influence actually on policy. I would say this is a really important policy decision because all of these things aren't the economics of agriculture, they're rooted in policies. And so I think
what's the question?
A really good point. The question, is how should basically the funding that's going into restructuring only be targeted at non-old vineyards. So basically, you can't get should you not be able to get restructuring for heritage vineyards?
Yeah.
I mean, while Rafa's there, we should say that the Sonsiera cooperative that he represents, or was the winemaker for, in San Vicente la Sonsiera in Rioja, is a model cooperative where they've separated out the best old vines. I mean, if Virgen Las Viñas was run as the Sonsiera cooperative is run, then the image of La Mancha would be very different, I think. Listen, I've got one more question because I'm aware of time. Can I ask my final question, Sarah? Because it's paradoxically, it's about the future. Because, if you don't plant vines today, you won't have old vines in the future. And I know that you're doing this in your El Romeral vineyard. You're looking at climate change, and we haven't really talked about climate change too much, but we will with other speakers. What are you planting looking to the future? What will the old vines of 50 years or 100 years look like?
Yes, sometimes when I started to make the wines for the family, we felt that there was no our viticulture has been always a guide for someone else, not from through not with a Manchego vision for the future, and so that's what we're trying to do. And so we thinking in the heritage that we will give to the next generation. So we really consider climate change as one of the main issues, of course. And so we've been planted analyzing grapes that quite much later, you know, as because in that way we can avoid the summer heating when it's ripening. So we're planting Moravia Agria, Pinto Velasco, Albillo, Mayor, Mazuelo, Carignan, Graciano, and all those grapes ripe very late, and it's bring us very low pH and natural acidity, so we can really make very fresh wines in a warm place such as La Mancha.
So two things. One is their late ripening, obviously, unlike Tempranillo, Centibel, which is early ripening.
Yeah.
Yeah. The other is they're all Spanish in inverted commas. That they're Spanish varieties. They're not international varieties like Cabernet. I suppose you could say Mazuelo is Carignan, so it's international in a sense. And the other thing is that they retain acidity, but also that they can work in dry farmed vineyards. Is that correct? Without irrigation, maybe not to establish them, but once they're established.
Yeah, I think so. We are also studying about that. For example, Tinto Velasco is a great variety that it really needs very, very few water. So yes, we're looking at that, of course.
Fantastic. Okay, so I run out of questions. We're 1 minute over time, and I know you want to stick to time. So Elias, thank you so much for joining us from Chile. I hope you'll stay with us because it's fascinating. If you've not tasted Elias's wines from Patagonia and also from La Mancha, and I'm looking forward to seeing what you're going to do with Fernando Almeida with these very old vines from Italy. What are you waiting for? Jancis likes them, I like them, everybody likes them. Get out there and buy them, folks. Okay, Sarah, back to you. We're going to have a little 3-minute break, I think, before Fauzi comes on from Lebanon.
Well, thank you very much.
To you.
Okay, so very quickly, I have a question from Dolly Moore. Elias, what's the average annual rainfall in La Mancha?
It's 240 millimeters a year, around that 220, 240, something.
And most of that is in winter, is it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's winter, spring, but not during the summer. It's only few. And well,
someone saying
everybody and
that famous line about La Mancha that it's 3 months of winter and 9 months of hell. Yeah.
Yes,
it's hot, man.
Tim, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
So I think basically a few lessons to take out of that. First of all, the transformative quality of good old vines. They can transform the reputation, vocation of the grape and a region. No one in a million years expected anything great to come out of La Mancha. Guess what? It can, if you work with respect and with a kind of conviction. We're losing them, but actually, as came out of the questioning, especially the question from Rafa, is that actually it's completely possible to integrate these into a successful business model. It just takes the creativity and the will, and there are rewards.
We can't hear from Rafa, can we? But it's very interesting that they've selected vineyard parcels that they're doing as Viñedos Singulares, and he said that the pride in the growers who've been taking their grapes to the cooperatives is transformative. These old guys who are sometimes in their 80s still want to get out there and make sure their wine is the best in the co-op.
Rafa, if you have, let's give this 2 minutes. Come on, we're all here. Rafa, if you would like to say something, I've switched on your ability to chat. Sorry, I put you on the spot there, Rafa. But if you would like to say something, now's your moment. Okay. That's fine. You know, he may be like racking or something. Okay.
Never mind. But wait.
Thank you.
Okay.
Well, thank you very much for having me, giving voice to my region and us in this wonderful organized conference. Thank you very much, Tim, Sarah, and all the team.
Okay, fantastic. Okay, so from one folk region, if you like. We're now moving to another example of really the transformative quality of old wines, and we're moving to the cradle of wine. So we are moving to Lebanon with Fawzi Issa. Just before we go on, I should just say that the UK government yesterday announced that today we would be having 1 minute silence at 12 p.m. in the UK to honour the memory of all those affected by and lost to COVID. As this is an international conference, what I'd like to say is if there's anyone in the UK who wants to honour that, we feel it, and I think we all have a profound gratitude for being able to get together and connect with each other very soon. We are going to carry on with the conference in all respect, and but if anyone would like to honour that 1 minute silence, either in your hearts or in practice, then that's what's happening here in the UK at 12, and thoughts obviously with everyone, all the businesses and lives affected. So. Over to Fawzi, who is just doing great work. So I'll let you.
I think we're going to start with a video, aren't we? Before, just if anybody wants to have a quick comfort break or pour themselves a cup of tea or anything,
Okay.
we're going to put the video up first. Madeline, have we got the video ready to go? Fawzi, have you got the video ready to go?
Give me 1 moment.
Here it comes. It's not that we don't want to hear from you, Fawzi, we do. But
Okay. Should I play the Old Vines video for the break, or do you want Fawzi's video?
I think Fawzi's video, yeah.
Right. Okay.
Just for those of you who don't know Fawzi's probably the best known winemaker, in fact, definitely the best known winemaker in Lebanon these days. Now that Serge is no longer with us, sadly. Here we go.
So this is.
Can I talk about the video over the video?
Yes, please. These are wild lines, aren't they?
Yeah. Are these, Madeline, is this shared already or not shared now? Should I stop?
I can see it. It's not moving.
Not moving.
It's not moving. Okay.
Let's move it if we can. Sorry, brief technical.
Sorry.
These are all.
Before we're waiting for the video, Fawzi, just tell us where where are you at the moment? Are you in the Bekaa Valley or are you in Beirut or what? Ah.
Yeah, I'm in central Bekaa Valley today. It's full spring.
Okay, here comes the video. There we go.
Okay, these are as you can see, this is the cedars. I mean, very old cedars, as Lebanon is known for the cedars. I mean, we're talking about thousands of years of cedars, and you can't hear the. It's not moving. Is it moving?
I don't know. It's stuck.
What?
Sorry.
Why don't we start the interview? If we want to come, we'll come back to the video in a second. Okay, Fawzi, nice to see you. For those of you who don't know Fawzi, he's very helpfully put the name of his winery on the wall behind him, along with all of that collection of corkscrews and other implements, racking tools and all sorts of things. The Domaine des Tourelles is, as you can see on the wall, 1868. It's the oldest winery in Lebanon. It was set up by a Frenchman, wasn't it, called François Eugène Brun. I just tell us a little bit about him, this sort of crazy Frenchman that the Lebanon reminded him of home, and just how old are the vines, your oldest vines? Do any of the vines that he planted, do any of those sites still exist? I mean, probably the vines are no longer there, but the sites might well be.
No, definitely some of the vines are still existing, and I mean, part of the old vines of the Bekaa Valley is, 50 years ago there was, 30 years ago, there was only 3-4 wineries active in the Bekaa Valley. So definitely, Pierre Brin used to be one of the active planters of old vines, of currently old vines in the Bekaa Valley. And voilà. So Pierre Brin is from the south of France, whose grandfather came to Lebanon. So he's the third generation. So Domaine Tourelle goes back to 1868, and the family was working on the international highway that goes from Beirut, Bekaa to Syria and Jordan. And François Eugène Brin, who is the grandfather, decided to stop the work with the company of the engineering company and built one of the most beautiful today winery in the Bekaa Valley, considered to be one the first commercial winery in Lebanon, because at that time families used to produce their own wines, and church and Xara used to be producing wines for the church. So Domaine Tourelle was the first brand to sell ready bottles to the market.
Do we know what he planted? Do the records exist of what he planted?
Definitely, I mean, he definitely used some table grapes available at that time, and we can say that Cinsault, Carignan were grapes that planted in the region. We know, I mean, I worked with some old vines, Cinsault. There were 65 to 75 years in the same area called Halwa, and people, they say that these vines were planted from actual old vines available in the Bekaa Valley. So.
And those cuttings would have come from France or maybe North Africa in those days?
The old cuttings from North Africa, definitely.
It's interesting, many people may not know the French link, that Lebanon was a French protectorate for a while, and a lot of Lebanese speak French as well as English. You studied at the University of Montpellier, having studied first of all in Beirut, and you worked for René Rostaing in the Rhône, then you worked at Chateau Margaux in Bordeaux, and in 2008, as a very young man, you're still young, you went back to Domaine Tourelle. Just tell us what state the vineyards were in when you got back there.
Actually, I mean, coming back from at the young age, coming back to Bekaa Valley to run the family business, you will definitely come back with an idea of restructuring everything, destroying concrete vats, building stainless steel, buying stainless steel, going into technology, high tech, planting new vines. But I was too lucky that when I left Margaux, there was a big wave in Bordeaux, Club de Neuf, all the big wineries, big wave of going to the roots, going back to the roots. I'm talking about back in 2007, where wineries like Petrus, Latour, Margaux were all reconsidering the importance of concrete vats, considering the importance of natural fermentation, natural yeasting. So I got this, wave and reflection when I came back home, that I need to relax, counter them, bring back in value all what Domaine Tourelle is rich of, which is the walls, the concrete vats, the ambiance, the family spirit, the natural production, the old vines, the bush vines, not the espalier. So all this style of I call them gold memories or gold facts of the winery were brought back, luckily, to the scene, and since then I was working day to day to discovering something new and discovering something that we need to bring back from the old times, like the filtration, like the old vines, like the concrete vats, natural yeasting, everything.
But it's interesting, old vines were part of a philosophy. They're part of your philosophy, that it's old ways, and we can see all those old corkscrews on the wall. But I know that you, like Elias, working with those tinachas, you're using a lot of concrete and older, bigger wood, aren't you, in your wines?
Yeah, bigger. We're working on concrete vats.
Yeah.
definitely. I mean, concrete vats. I mean, without, I mean, it goes all like the same family. You know, concrete vats, old wines, natural yeasting, crazy style of producing wines without going by the book. You know, you should always think that you cannot go too wild while opening the book every day and checking what's right, what's wrong. You know, you need to go full adventure, full on board, and what makes the good job. The end result coherent. You know, I mean, you said. I mean, if I when I came back home, the old vines were available definitely, and for a winemaker, I mean, like me, I mean, old vines is much more beautiful, much more easy than young shoots. You know, old vines are self-regulated, self-balanced. They are solid. They give you ripening on the right time. They give you structure. They give you acidity. So definitely they give you good quality. You know, whereas young shoots, young vines, you need to struggle to find the balance. You need to make sure that plantation location is correct. Yeah. So old vines is just like like it makes your game easier.
Okay.
No, so we've got apologies for the technical issue. Buffering seems to be sorted. On regulating old vines, self-regulating old vines, we're going to show this video where Fauzi found wild vines, well, doing their own thing. Not exactly wild vines, old vines doing their own thing.
Fauzi, can you talk us through it?
Yeah, so this is
the cedar.
So this is the cedars. This is a part of Mount Lebanon where cedars are available. All cedars are available. I would say cedars that are more than hundreds of years, and I would say that they make the beauty of Lebanon. You can see great vines, vines called merweh, just climbing on all cedars, wild grown there, available in the region since ages, non-treated, non-pruned, none anything. It's just randomly grown wild in the region, and it's beautiful that you can see they are still healthy. We are that people, technology people who really create this kind of protocol to let the vines get used to us, But if you keep them, they can be. I mean, they can grow easily alone. Give you the beautiful structure. This merweh has acidity, Tim. You cannot believe the acidity. I mean, I just bottled the first vintage of old merweh about the last week. The acidity is unreal. The structure is unreal. The story, the history that gives you this wine is unreal. It's not treated. Can you believe 30 years probably, non-pruned, non-treated. You still have healthy grapes. You still have good yield, good ambiance of the vines. And thanks to a friend called Eddie Shami, who we spent, for a couple of weeks searching and digging on the wild mountain of that area, just finding where we can find some délaissés, some vines that are not being taken care of. And we discovered, many things. Today, the white wine I produced. Yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
Just tell us quickly for people who don't know it about the Bekaa Valley, because you're obviously in a Mediterranean climate, Eastern Mediterranean climate, but it's at altitude, isn't it? I mean, what's special about this place? Just tell us about the soils and why have old vines survived there in particular?
It's just, Bekaa Valley is the hub of natural producing vines, apple trees, olive trees, everything, birds, and this is. I can see people saying that the audio is not working, probably from me. Tim, are you hearing me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah. Well, I think can everybody hear Fauzi? I think so.
I think there are a few problems. I can hear you fine.
Yeah.
Okay. And the beauty of Bekaa Valley is that it has all the characteristics, climate characteristics that can give you the comfort zone of planting wide variety of grapes and going very wild in this variety. So when I say wild, you don't need to you don't need to plant with 90-degree vines, properly made, modeling vines. You just need to go wild and keep the vines adapt to itself, adapt to the weather. So that's why bush vines is essential. That's why all vines can be well adapted to the area, and we have clean and correct weather that really can push the old vines to keep on fighting for a long time and a long cycle. Because I mean, what is the enemy? What is the enemy of old vines? It's diseases. It's dryness of the shoots. It's the difference of temperature that can really attack the young shoot of every year of the old vines tree. So when you have correct balance of the weather, the old vines will survive. It will give you always good quality and coherent quality. So Bekaa Valley is amazing. It's amazing for the old vines. Yeah.
I mean, Lebanon has about 2,500 hectares overall. I mean, what percentage of those would be old vines? If we say an old vine is over 50 years old, let's say for sake of argument.
I would say probably 10 to 15% old vines above 50. But out of the 10-15, there is certainly 3-4% that can cross the 100 years, 150 years. I mean, these merwaleh, definitely more than 150 years. I mean, grown in the mountain widely, and without any problem, and giving you great yield.
And are most of the grapes that have survived, are they Mediterranean grapes, in inverted commas, like Carignan, like Cinsault, like Grenache? You also mentioned Meroe. What about Obeidi, which is the other Lebanese grape? There are two native, in inverted commas, Lebanese grapes, aren't there?
Yeah, Obeidi is the king of table grapes. And that recently, I mean, we discovered that it's a king for Arak as well, to our Lebanese grapes. And Arak, Tim, exists since thousands of years in Lebanon. Who doesn't drink Arak in Lebanon? So definitely Obeidi is an old variety in Lebanon. We have some beautiful old assets of Obeidi that gives you amazing fat to the wine, with good, beautiful backbone and good minerality and salinity. So yeah, I mean, Obeidi is again another beautiful. I've just made a new blend now, which is, and I think it's rare, which I blended the Merwah from the Mount of Lebanon in the region of cedars with the Obeidi, who's the king of Bekaa Valley, 50-50, one that has beautiful acidity, the other one that has a nice minerality and fattiness in the wine, and both are old vines, and really the result, I'm not doing marketing to myself, but the result is touching. It's touching. It gives you a feeling that that we don't need all the books. We don't need all this mega technology to produce beautiful wines. We just need 90% of the job is made by the vine. If it's well properly adapted to its soil, it gives you great wines.
Well, you've talked about the advantages of working with old vines. Obviously, it's traditional. It's part of heritage. They're self-regulating. All those sorts of things. I just wonder, are there any disadvantages? I mean, yield's obviously one of them. What about finding the people to work the vineyards? How do you find the people who can work those vineyards?
Listen, again, it's the easiest part when you have old vines. I mean, old vines are you have, especially when our bush vines, you have the shape that is easy to treat. If anyone who understands a little bit pruning can prune it. For the people and cultural practices, it's easy. The disadvantage you have, it's commonly as the yield, where you have low yield. I would say there is the disadvantage is much more amplified when you don't own the land or one, and two, when you're a winemaker in a winery that the company expects from you always, financially good results and everything. You need to spend time to explain that old vines gives you low yield. But other than losing financially, and yet it's not proven, because when you sell old wines, you get more earnings because you sell it with higher price. And but definitely you lose value of the land because you get much less in yield. and diseases, because I mean, you need
Which
to use.
diseases in particular? ESCA is bad, is it?
ESCA is bad. The Prisma is bad. When you have a drought shoot, yeah. I mean, but definitely it's the yield. You know, it's the yield. But I mean, I found I mean, with my series of old wines, Senso, Calignan, Merweh, now I found a new chapter in my life. You know, giving me again strength in terms of marketing, in terms of identity, in terms of confidence, trust, and this is linked to everything we do now. I mean, natural yeasting, natural production. Yeah.
Do you find people are prepared to pay more just because it says old vine on the label? What do you say? Do you say old vines, or old vine, or vieille vigne? What do you put on?
It's old vines, Senso, old vines, Merweh, old vines, Carignan. We're not over pricing the wines. I mean, it's just 30% more than the classic range. And I mean to have an old vine Senso, one that is old, really old, beautiful vines, and Senso that is atypical in the world, for like 16, 17 pound in the UK. I think this is quite good in terms of price. I mean, it's not.
I mean, is it profitable for you to make those wines? I mean, you're making more money on those wines, even though you've got lower yields. You're getting a 30% higher price. Does that compensate for the loss of yields?
Yeah, definitely. It can add a lot of other things on the plate as well.
Yeah. I mean, what do you think that you can taste old vines in the bottle, as it were? I mean, is it concentration? Is it balance? Is it other things?
I mean, where do you understand it more is when you go into atypical varieties like the Senso. If you drink a Senso that is 5 years old Senso, and then you compare it with 50, 60 years old Senso, it's definitely different wines. It's different wines. More structure, more acidity, more coherence, more balance, more minerality. We have everything in the old wine Senso compared to the new Senso, because I mean, again, yield in the old vines, you need to control the yields, and the old vines are controllable, alone. Whereas young shoots of Senso, the yield is a little bit over, so you will lose a little bit of concentration. So definitely, what we can do, I mean, we can taste from the winery. I mean, 5 to 6 years old Senso, and then going a decade after decade. I have 15, 25, 35, 65, 75. You can see the quality is always uprising.
So it's good to know that some things improve as they get older, then, isn't it?
Yeah.
so it's almost, you wonder whether the vine is learning from its environment. I know that's a very superficial way of putting it, but it's adapting to its environment, and putting its effort into things that matter more, maybe, rather than just sort of growing massive canopies. Not maybe that massive in a hot climate, but is there something in that, do you think?
I mean, I believe in more controlling the wildness, going into wild system de conduite or way of growing the vines, the bush vines. But definitely, when you come into bush vines, old vines, you need to keep a little bit window for wildness. You need to keep it wild because it's already wild. I mean, what is bush vines? Bush vines is we don't put trellis to control it. We just give it the freedom. I mean, Tim, why bush vines are important in our region, and you know why? Because it gives humidity. But do we control that factor? No. I mean, bush vines became resistant to dryness alone, and some varieties do not have this factor because they are already resistant. They don't need the mushroom style of the vine. So I believe we need to keep it a little bit free as 50%, and then control the other 50% just to make sure. I mean, we have a longer life cycle.
It would be interesting to know from people watching. I mean, I've had a few examples of wines, particularly from Sauvignon Blanc, where the first release, even when the vines are 2 years, but definitely 3 years old, has been amazing. Sometimes because there's not much leaf area, and you get this incredible concentration. But there aren't many examples of grapes that taste good taste better from younger vines than they do from 10, 15. I mean, if we say a mature vine is probably what, 15 years old, 10 years old when it's starting to give something good, and then
15, 25.
Yeah.
So this year I'm trying a small parcel of non-pruning old, do not prune old sensor. Just give it 2-3 years of natural whiteness and see what this can affect the quality. And I think, I mean, it's funny to say. Because the Meroueh that we saw, it wasn't pruning. It wasn't pruned. I mean, for Deek, and the wine is outstanding, man, outstanding. And just to observe what could be the difference of non-pruning varieties for a couple of years, and see probably it will be much more resistant to diseases.
Yeah, so that makes sense, doesn't it? Well, our time is up. Fawzi, as ever, brilliant, and you can see why Fawzi is a great communicator. I love that idea, Sarah, that you have a window for wildness. Yeah. I'm all in favour of a window for wildness in life, really. It's a window for wildness.
We all need that. We all need it.
I didn't tell Fawzi what to say, but actually, Fawzi, you set up a brilliant connection to a speaker that we have on tomorrow. So Marco Simonit, who's he's like an Italian hipster pruner. Actually, he's a revolutionizer of pruning, and his whole philosophy is that look at what these plants are. Look at how they want to live, and he is basically saying you don't have to compromise on and think you're only going to plant a vine for 20 years. You can plant it for your lifetime, and you can hand it on. And the minute you start thinking in that way, you start cultivating it differently. And the thing about kind of respecting its wildness, respecting the fact it needs to branch. And it's not a fanciful philosophy, it's very rooted in science. He's been really successful in reducing the incidence of trunk disease, but actually it's rooted in this looking at the natural sort of will, if you like, of what these plants want to do. Now, so we've got a couple of questions, if I may. So Michael Karam, who you may know.
Michael.
Michael Karam is a great expert and author on Lebanese wine. Michael says, now that Sanso and Carignan, as well as Meroueh and Obeidi, are being taken seriously by Lebanese winemakers, how do you see the development of the sector in terms of style and use of varieties in the coming years? Will there be a move away from the so-called international wines that tended to define Lebanon's output in the decades after the 75 to 90 civil war?
Yeah. I mean, already thanks for Michael. Michael is a champion in going to the right, Mediterranean style of the wines rather than going international style of the wines, because coming from Lebanon, do you hear me, Sarah?
Yeah, I hear you.
Because coming from Lebanon, we need to showcase our identity, and we need to show to the world that we have something beautiful, new. So definitely things are going to change in the coming decades. I mean, all our individual wineries success in terms of going to the Mediterranean style of the wines, like the Old Senso, Old Carignan. I want to say something that probably our French will not like it a bit, but it's right that we're using Senso, which is a French grapes. We're going to Carignan, French grapes, but we believe it has the Carignan that we're using in Lebanon and the Senso we're using in Lebanon are cousins to the right Senso and Carignan. They are adapted to the high altitude, and when we go high altitude, I mean people, if we go live in 1,000 meter altitude rather than people living in the coastal area, they are different. We cannot say they are the same people. They have different accents, different perception to the world, to the future, to the everything. So definitely, Senso and Carignan of the Bekaa Valley are adopted varieties that people and winemakers today, they need to think a little bit outside the box and think a little bit, if we're taking our wines outside the world, we need to show something new. We don't want to show them Petit Verdot, Merlot, Syrah, Cabernet again. They have plenty of these wines. We need to show them something that really look and show showcase our Lebanese Mediterranean wildness, thinking we produce wines with the hard conditions, and why not to produce grapes in the hard conditions?
Fantastic. And then I just wanted to bring in actually a comment from Dylan Bree. So Dylan is a researcher. He's just recently published a doctoral thesis on the interaction of vine age with wine quality. He's based in Adelaide. And he has found that one of the factors for increasing kind of almost super terroir for old vines is epigenetic adaptation to environment. And for me, I think this is the interest with old vines. They become not just epigenetically adapted sort of botanically, but also the people who are working them. They find ways to keep them going. And it's this intersection of culture, bioculture, environment, phenology, which actually I think elevates these vines. But just a question that's come up that I just want to address quickly here is there a direct correlation with vine yield and old vines, and the reason that old vines giving quality is to do with reduced yields? Dylan's research suggests that there is no linear yield reduction with age. It's more complex than that. So we are just cracking open what old vines really mean, and it's not just a question of low yields, it's more, which is great. So we have a lot more questions. We will address all of them as we go and as we sort of publish the proceedings. But Fauzi, thank you so much. Can't wait to come to Becca and sit with you under those cedars. Are we allowed to come to Lebanon yet? Is Lebanon open to travel?
To see if you're allowed to leave the UK first.
Not yet. Yeah. Not necessarily, John.
But this is an international forum, and we've had some people asking if they can come to Lebanon yet.
Yeah, you can come. You can come.
Right. You've all had a personal invitation from Fauzi, right?
But, Sarah, it's not only the vines that are wild in Lebanon. The government is wild. So there are no rules. Don't worry.
Oh, you got to laugh, haven't you? Thank you, Fauzi. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you, Madeline.
Yeah.
All right, see you.
Fauzi's wines imported in the UK by Boutino and also available in various markets around the world. Do check them out. Wonderful wines. We are now moving to Italy, and we are going to be speaking with Salvo and Simone Forti, and they are on Sicily, but actually they would say they are from Etna. And Salvo and Simone are working really at this nexus where it's community regeneration, the respect and restored dignity to the really skilled agriculture that is required to tend really old, highly localized vine systems. And they have set up a grower collective called I Vigneri, which is all about restoring in a way that gives good lives to the growers who are working with very old albarello terraces on Etna, working with the native grape varieties, also working with very traditional heritage, kind of rich methods of production. Wonderful wines, and I think that although clearly they have a great sense of sort of poetry and connection with their terroir, Salvo is a proper viticulturalist. He knows how hard it is to grow this stuff, and his whole project has been about restoring the respect that was once given to the skilled viticulturalists way back in the 1400s and bringing those skills back into the young generation and making sure not just that the vines survive, but the people, the skills to nurture them survive. So an incredible life mission, and I'll pass you over now.
Hey Sarah, hi everybody.
How are you? Good to see you guys.
For this possibility and your consideration about us. Thank you.
Fantastic. One of the best tastings I've ever done was with you on Etna, talking to you about soil types and these local grapes. But there's just a little talk about Etna, the region and the DOC. In the last 60 years, Etna's shrunk, hasn't it? From what, 30,000 hectares, and now I think the DOC is like 1,200 hectares, although it's now growing again. What happened to Etna, really?
We have three things. The first is there's over the big market of unbottled wine from the South Europe to North Europe. In the past, big quantity from Etna went to North Italy and France. At the same time now, the production of the Etna is only for the bottled wine. The second is in the past is a farmer society. The people drank much wine. No? Now, no. And the other is important, is very important. The new viticulture has arrived in the Etna, in Sicily, in the Etna, is just for mechanization, a new grape, more productive, chemical fertilization, and irrigation too. It is not possible, not unsustainable for the Etna viticulture. And this is the problem because the Etna disappeared about the.
I mean, it's a little bit like what we found with Elias talking about what happened in La Mancha in the 1990s with the planting of international grapes rather than local ones. I mean, Etna, for people who've not been there, and it's a crazy place. Occasionally you see people posting videos of the mountain, of the volcano exploding, and you talk about, I love this phrase, it's absurd order, you said, because it's got this active volcano. Just tell us a little bit about what are the advantages and the disadvantages of growing grapes on this amazing volcano, because it's got so many different terroirs, isn't it?
Etna, for me, is the primordial cause, and we have in this land all the climate in the world, all the volcanic soil, of course, and the particularity is because we have possibility to cultivation in the vineyard in different altitude in different parts of the volcano. At the sample, the vineyard is possible having 400 meters until 1,300 meters. The climate is changed completely. Other, dependent on the part of the volcano, is more or less near the sea. The condition is different. And the other important is the soil. The soil is a primordial soil, is energetic, is a volcanic, is a new soil. Every eruption arrives in the Etna. And there is a lot of minerality in the soil, and this is important for the energy and the power for the vine and after of the wine. It's a very special, a unique particular land, I think, in the world. In this system is very particular. It's easy to produce this typical and special wine.
I mean, there are other regions in the world with volcanic soils, obviously, but how many regions have active volcanoes in the middle of the region? Must be one, right?
I don't know, but sure, in Italy, the only very alive volcano is Etna. Etna is a volcano and a mountain too, because we 3,000 meters, no? It's a very special place. But of course, it's possible the eruption. It's often sometimes the reduction. We planted the vineyard, the lava, the Etna sometimes to take again the vineyard. Okay, no vineyard here.
It's not about old vines. I just wonder, are you ever scared when it erupts? I mean, do you think of Pompeii and think, oh God, they'll find me under pumice stones?
But for us, for example, is the normal life on the Etna. We live in a addiction with the volcano. So we know that for us is
どっかもう下切れたら上全部ダメになるん
we
で
know also that we have very good possibility to planting vineyard to be alive with the volcano. So it's a very we live in two different and opposite ways. So we know that sometimes can be moved from Etna because probably they made an important eruption, so we lost all. But at the same time, we know that we have possibility to continue to live on Etna.
It's like the life.
It's like life. I mean, I looked at the list of grape varieties that are grown in the Etna region. It's a very long list, you know, including one grape variety called Terribile.
Yes, in the past,
Terribile.
we have about more 100 different type varieties.
Most of the old vines are Nerello Mascalese or Caricante. Yeah?
Caricante, Grenache too, Minnella too.
Minnella, yeah.
Or Grenache. Grenache arrived in
Nerello Cappuccio as well.
Nerello Cappuccio, yes. Yes, this is the typical.
Tell us a little bit more about those two very special grapes, about Caricante and Nerello Mascalese. Are they native grapes?
Yes, it's absolutely. It's a native grape, and maybe I think 1,000, maybe 2,000 a year. We have this native variety in the Etna, and interesting because the Nerello Mascalese Caricante is the native grape of the Etna, but no, in every way in the Etna is a good variety for the cultivation of the vineyard, because it depends on the altitude, depends on the part of the volcano, and the soil too. And this native variety usually born only for the Etna area, not for the Sicily. In fact, when we planting this variety outside the Etna, isn't on the same. Sometimes the result is not good for the wine, because this native variety is just selected just for the volcano area. It's very special. It's very typical. It's when the selection is the men, not the people. The people are created the coevolution with the grape, with the people, and with the special terroir. This for me is fantastic. It's unique, no?
I think in that video that we just saw, the photographs that we saw, there was an example of Alberello. Yeah, this unique, well, not unique. It looks a little bit like the Onishala system that's used in the Rhone, where it's a bush vine with a stake in the middle. Can you tell us a little bit about its history and why was it employed in the first place, and is it still popular?
Yeah. Okay, so the Alberello was one of very first cultivation in Sicily that arrived from Greek, and the Roman gives also important influence because they gives incrustation of the Alberello. So the Alberello is the bush vine and is really similar to the Chalat in Val d'Aron, and is also for us one of the most important system cultivation on Etna, because Etna is very difficult soil, so we need to make the terrace, and for us it's not possible to mechanization our region, so we need to the right compromise with our land and the variety too that we have, like Nerello Mascalese, like Caricante. The right equilibrium is the use of the Alberello. And in some photo we can see some real old vines, because this is a demonstration that this is the best and the perfect system for our place.
The Alberello style is a system three-dimensional and vertical.
Yeah.
The vine need to go up. It's like a man, a people. And when the vertical, it is perfect because it go up for the sun.
It's like the wild vines in the trees that we saw Bowsy using, yeah?
Exactly.
Yes, sir.
Tell us a little bit about the terraces. Are the terraces just against erosion, or do they serve another purpose?
Yeah, exactly. Because Etna, my father explained before, that is really different. So there are some part of the Etna that is more risk, because, for example, where we live, the east part of the Etna, we live in the between the sea and the mountain. So we have an important discussion of temperature, and especially we have an important rainfall. We talk about in some very extreme vintage like 2,000 millimeters of rainfall. So we need to make the terrace for protect us and for protect the people who live down. And in fact, the most part of the Etna, when you arrive, you can see before to implanting the vineyard, the people made the terrace, because terrace is also important for protect the soil, but also for makes a construction of our landscape. And of course, we use only the stone, so the volcanic stone. And this is also a way to recuperate the stone from the vineyard and for make something that is really particular and specific.
Tell us a bit more about biodiversity, because it's a very rich mountain volcano in terms of its biodiversity. And I know, Salvo, you often say that that's a very important part of terroir. It's not just the vines and the soil and the climate. Biodiversity is very important to you.
The biodiversity is a fundamental. It is the guarantee for the future, no? And in this case, the biodiversity we have the different grape and in different ages of the vine in the vineyard, and especially all the vineyard for us mean in typicity, unicity, and it's very difficult to replicate it way. In fact, when we have the old vineyard, old vine, is important to protect. It's continuing, no? Just because it's like the old man. I am old man, you know. Passing my experience, you know, in my son. The old vine in the vineyard, it's a possibility to pass the experience in a younger vine. This is important. More biodiversity mean more typicity and unicity wine in this case.
Tell us also about your planting density, because the normal density is what, 3,000 to 4,000 plants per hectare, and you're at what, 9,000, which is pretty close to some Burgundian levels where people are at 10, 11, very high, but 9 is high, isn't it? What does that give you with old vines?
And the Etna is the best compromise just for the quality and quantity. When you make a terrace, it's very expensive, and the money is expensive in the time and work. And when you have a little bit land or price the land, you won't have a good production for quality, for vine, and at the same time a good quantity. And when you produce just 1 kilo for vine, in 1 hectare, 9,000 plants, mean 9,000 kilos. It's a good quantity, but in the same moment is a good quality. Is the good compromise found the vineyard on the Etna in the past? But the problem is not possible mechanization.
Okay, right.
You have to work. We have to vine by vine, not vineyard. We don't work. We don't cultivate the vineyard. We cultivate the vine. Is very important for me.
So you work vines, not vineyards. Yeah,
vines, not vineyard. Yeah. We know the old vineyard. We have the name for the old vine because we know a long time, you know.
So the choice is between 3,000 and 3 kilos, yeah, per vine, or 9,001, yeah.
Yeah, but important the quantity. Usually, when we have 300 plants in 1 hectare, you know, you want more, especially you want for one wine 2 kilo, 3 kilo is the mechanization system, no industrial system. But when you produce 3 kilo per vine, it's different 1 kilo per vine. You need more fertilization, chemical fertilization, maybe irrigation. It's a different approach. It's a different equilibrium and the harmony.
I mean, Sarah mentioned the cooperative that you founded in 1993, which is called I Vinieri, yeah, and it was based on a guild really that was set up in Catania, where you were born in 1435. You weren't born in 1435, but the guild was called the Maestranze dei Vinieri. Yeah? And I love this idea. And watching your video, it's very moving, where you talk about cultivating people, don't you? I mean, is that what? Just tell us a little bit about what the I Vinieri does really in 3 regions, in Etna and in Ragusa and on the island of Pantelleria.
So for me, it's a little bit difficult to work with in front of the laptop, no?
You're doing brilliantly.
You know, I am an older man, like all the vine, I prefer stay in the vineyard, but okay. It's important. Okay, in those years in the past, the viticulture was fast change. In those years, introduced the new viticulture, the new grade, quantity, and the mechanization. And I thought I don't change. I want to continue. I want to improve all the tradition, the old viticulture, and that. And of course, when you want to continue this tradition, I need more workers, more people, because we have more hectares of vineyard. And I thought it's important to prepare the new men, the new people, just to take the experience from the older man, and to pass the new people. And when the other producer just change the vineyard for the new, the industry new, I to continue in this way is a very, very hard, because it's very difficult to cultivate the people. It's more difficult more difficult than cultivate the vineyard. But when I found in the old in the library the Maestranza dei Vinieri, I thought this is, for me, is my way to the first the vineyard, the first the producer. I put the people, I put the man, and continue in this way. And now is a good for us, because we have the skill, we have the experience to continue like all the in tradition or all the way. You understand?
Absolutely. It's like an apprenticeship, isn't it? I mean, it's very moving, guys. Do watch the video. I think Sarah will probably post it, I hope, on the site. But I love the thing you talked about. You're saying so often old people are left in squares in Italy, just, you know, to sit in a square and talk to their friends and die, and that their knowledge is not passed on. And you're basically, it's a flow of knowledge. And I like the way you talked about it and said that it makes people less selfish in a way, because they realise it's not just my vineyard that's going to die with me. I'm passing on my knowledge, and then in a sense, I am part of my vineyard that goes to the next generation.
Yeah, it's important, because in this way you conserve, is a conservative viticulture. You conserve your terroir.
Yeah.
Because in definitive, for me, for us, the wine is a instrument, is a tool just to arrive, continually conserve the terroir. And the terroir is a delicate, is a difficult terroir. You need the in this case the conservative viticulture. And the Albarello, the terrace, this system is the best, because I have 2,000 years
of history. And I like your idea of you're giving respect to agricultural work.
Respect for environment and for the people.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit about the palmento. Palmento traditional gravity-fed old wineries, often with open fermenters and wooden presses. Are we in danger of losing those too, along with old vines?
Yes, because it's the palmento is the core is a part, integral part for the production of the wine in the Etna. And in the Etna it's possible to see a lot of palmento, but in the past, when arrived the new viticulture, the new enology, is the government decides to finish, don't possibly to use the palmento. After 2000 years, the government decides it's no good the palmento for the wine in the Etna. Because it's not according with the new law, European law, but and arrived the new the new winemaker, the new enologist, the new process of the vinification. But we continue the same, and maybe today we in the Etna we are the only winery produce the wine in the palmento. But for us this is important because when you continue the possibility, the experience, the skill to in the future to have this possibility. Because when you finish the palmento, finish the vinification, and finish the possibility, the experience. Because not possible to find in the book, in the video, possibility to use the palmento. And the palmento don't need the outside energy. It's important, no? And the other is a building with the lavic stone and the maceration, the vinification. We use the lavic stone, and for me, incredible because today all people talk about the Etna, but don't talk about the palmento. And for me, it's crazy because when you talk about the Georgian wine, you talk about the amphora. Yeah. Why don't talk the palmento when you talk about Etna? Maybe because the people, the majority of the people don't have the idea the palmento or use the palmento. But for me, is very, very important if you want a true, authentic Etna wine.
And there's a very good video on YouTube of your palmento with the people making the wine. And it looks like fun. You know, it's the kind of place I'd like to do a harvest in your palmento.
It's easy.
A lot of drinking.
Yeah, it's easy palmento. It's very, very easy.
Listen, you make 7 wines, I think, on Etna. And how many of them are from old vines? Is it just the 2 reds, Vino Petra and Vinilice?
Vinilice is a rosé wine.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, we made 2 wines from the old vines because we have many different parcels of vineyards situated in 3 different areas of Etna, especially in the east part, in the north part, and the northwest, in many different altitudes. And for example, from the production of the old vines, we have the parcel situated in the north part as 600 meters, where we have a mix of many different varieties like Nerello Mascalese, some Nerello Capuccio, but also some Grenache that arrive from Spanish. And of course,
Sardinia, probably, yeah?
Yeah, in Sardinia the name is Cannonau.
Yeah, yeah.
In the Etna is Grenache.
And Sardinia was Spanish, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And this parcel, for example, situated at 600 meters, we have a very special microclimate because it's low altitude and is protected by the mountain and is no more humid like the east part where is in between the sea and the mountain. And of course also change the soil because the soil is sandy with a lot important presence of stone, of rocks. And the other vineyard where we produce our own wine from our vines is situated at 1,300 meters in the northwest. And change also, in fact, we have like 1 month of difference from the parcel situated in the north part, because of course more you go up, more change, like also in biodiversity, in microclimate, but also with the type of the soil that we have. For example, there is more sandy and more deep than the north, and we have also other different grapes. For example, you don't find Relo Mascalese because in Relo Mascalese there have problem to arrive a good maturation. So you find more Grenache, you find like Minella Bianca, Minella Nera, like some Trebbiano that here in Sicily they call Coto di Volpe, but it's not Coto di Volpe from Campania. So it's a mix. And for us, for have more respect of the old wines, we just harvest all together, and we blended this percentage of white and red, and we made a rosé. And sometimes we make a rosé that is still, and sometimes is sparkling, because it's depends by the vintage if the hardcore is good or not.
Last question, because I know that Sarah will be telling me to stick to time. You told me that it costs you two euros a kilo to grow your grapes, yeah? And you said that the average in the DOC would, or mechanized vineyards would be between 50 euro cents and €1. Can you get that increase in price? Can you sell your wines, your old vine wines, these wines, you know, made in a palmento, using albarello, all those things, at twice the price?
No, the grape, because the grape is imported, is expensive, but we don't use it this way. Don't duplicate the price of the wine, because we have more cost of the grape. Now, for us, it's important. The price of the wine is a good just for have the money to pay the worker, the vigneron, to pay the all work, and have some time just for invest for the future. And I think is for us it's important to have a good combination for the possibility to live with this the vigneron, and just have the money to continue in this way. We don't have need the other money, because we don't have a hobby. Because for us the viticulture is not my job, it's my life, you know, and not spend the money around the world.
You don't have a Maserati then, or a Ferrari?
Yes, no. I prefer have the other a little bit vineyard, and just for my family, for my son. For us, it's important to find the equilibrium, the harmony for life, for job, and for a good life. In the internet, possible have a good life, because we have a good place.
Apart from the eruptions.
Yeah, no, the eruptions is okay, but in the world we have the other big problem.
Yeah, there are bigger eruptions going on in the world. Yeah.
On that, no, it's a good life here, a good life, because we have good wine, a good food, a good company, and it's okay.
Thank you. I think that was fantastic. I love the idea of equilibrium in life and also in the vineyards. I love the idea of the palmento, you preserving the terraces and the albarello system, and most of all, I love the idea of primordial chaos. Sarah,
bring it on, yes. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Hello, Rosa. Lovely to see you. Rosa, would you just bear with me for 2 minutes, because we have some really interesting questions for Salvo and Simone. So, from Gary Baumgarten, I hope I've pronounced your name correctly. The question is, how do you do interplanting at Etna in these old vineyards? So I think that's when you replace old vines.
Okay, so on Etna, for example, in some in the parcel where we have the old vines, we recuperated this vineyard from for my grandfather, and we just in year by year we just replace the plant that is died, and we arrive to continue the same selection of our variety that is found in the vineyard, because we have the possibility to plant the vineyard, especially totally uncrafted, because we know that in the volcanic soil the phylloxera are problematic to move to develop in this soil, and we continue this in that way for continue and for have the same variety. Yeah.
Do you work with selection massage or with layering?
Exactly, we work with selection.
Selection massage.
It's a course selection, exactly. It's
Okay.
a course selection, okay?
Chaos selection, yeah. Wonderful. And a question from Margaret Rand, which says, if you have young vines in the vineyard alongside old vines, is it proved that the old vines pass their experience to the young vines? Do they not compete with the young vines for resources? So this is a question about your concept of a vineyard as a kind of an organism, I think.
Yeah, this is the concept, like the chaos that we talk about, because when we just replace the new plant in the very old vineyards, is just to have important biodiversity, and these are like when you live in a city, when you have the collaboration of many different people, so like the old man, the young man. And this is important for in the end to have something that is special and is unique, because each plant participated at the for make a result that in this case is the wine.
Interesting. And actually, Margaret, there's also an interesting new thesis that's been published in about the old vine Zinfandel in Lodi, actually about the co-planting of very old and young vines. So I'll put that on the site, but I'll also send it to you. Great. So thank you. I mean, I hope everyone can see why we wanted to bring Salvo and Simone on. It's this concept of not a kind of sentimental or historical conviction. It's that this is a living terroir, and humans are part of the living terroir. And I do urge you to watch their longer videos on YouTube. I think your point about agricultural work that used to be respected and with dignity, and that we've lost that, it's a really important point, and it is a point that you see in the regenerative agriculture movement. And I think that we're only going to see this become more important and relevant to people. So, and also his wines are fantastic. They're imported in the UK by Les Cartes de Paran, but I think on the website you can find out more about the I Vigneri collective wines. So, thank you.
Thank you.
A presto. I hope to see you in Etna.
Hey guys.
Audio chaos. Right. And we're now moving to South Africa. And we're finishing this session on South Africa because the South African Old Wine Project, I think, it's a benchmark for solving the theme, one of the themes we introduced at the beginning. How do you create a kind of collective identity and a category for old wine that makes co-ops decide, yes, we're going to bring on an old wine range, yes, we're going to pay more, yes, we're going to do marketing that convinces consumers of the value, the deeper value of old vines, culturally, qualitatively, and biodiversitively. So over to Tim and Rosa Kruger, and I think you'll also be joined in a moment by Andre Morgenthau. So
I can't see Rosa. Rosa, where are you? Will she pop up on the top?
she's there.
Down one. Ah, there you are. How are you?
Well, thanks, and you?
Yeah, I'm enormously well. And Rosa has very kindly decamped to somewhere with good Wi-Fi, haven't you?
Yes, with the help of Nadia and Andra.
Okay. And we're just hoping that load shedding is not going to damage us today.
Checked and we're safe for the time being.
Fantastic. Listen, Rosa, you're kind of the queen of old vines around the world. So we're going to divide this into two sections. Are we going to show a quick video first?
No, it's just a couple of just 4 pictures. This is the certified version.
Well, let's get onto those in a minute. The way we're going to divide this is that we're going to talk to you first of all about vineyards, and then Audrey Morgenthal, who runs the Old Vine Project, is going to come on and talk to us about the structure of the Old Vine Project and about the marketing and the seal and all those things. So to start with, we want to learn from you about viticulture, really. Just quickly, because people may not know this, you were a journalist for a while, a political journalist. That was a mistake. Then you studied to be a lawyer, and then you got involved in the wine industry. I mean, just tell us how you started working in vineyards. And I love your story about how you learned and going to see Evan Archer.
Tim, you've asked me this question so many times, so let's just quickly get it over with. Okay, you know, I don't like questions like this. I studied journalism. I did a master's degree in journalism in the late, well, that was many, many years ago, and then worked as a journalist for 7 years in the 80s. During that time, I met my husband, who was a brilliant lawyer. I fell in love with law, and I did my law degree. I was completing my articles as a junior attorney, wanting to be an advocate like the rest of my family. My family are either lawyers or farmers. Then I had my son. I was an attorney, article attorney, came home one night in my smart little car and my smart little black suit, carrying my smart little briefcase, feeling very important. And my son was waiting. This is actually really how it happened. My son sat outside the school waiting for me for the last 3 hours with red eyes. He was about 6 years old. And I decided there, I cannot work as a lawyer, be a mother, and raise my child in the city. So I received a job as a farmhand in the Western Cape. At that time it was a apple farm. My first vintage was a total failure because we had a hailstorm. Neighbor drove by, quite a nice man actually, and he said, why don't I consider vines, grapes? I always loved wine. The next morning I found Evan Archer and David Simon, the professors of viticulture and soil science here at the Stellenbosch University, and they sort of was slightly irritated, but they said, come and see us. I did, and a year later we started planting vines, and it was just an amazing success. So, and my son had a wonderful time growing up on a farm in the middle of a nature reserve. So,
Didn't I thought you told me Evan Archer told you to come at 7 o'clock in the morning, thinking we'd get rid of you, and at 7:15 you were there outside his door.
Yeah, they tried very hard to get rid of me. He thought I was an irritating young woman at that time. I was there at 7, and actually they came through weekend after weekend. I provided the food and the wine, and they taught me over a table till the middle of the night. We sat and we spoke viticulture. It was fantastic. It was a very good learning school for me.
But how did you first get involved with old vines?
When I started viticulture, I knew nothing. I still think I know very little. So I had to travel. The best way to actually learn is to travel to the best winemaking countries in the world. And I went for the last 20 years. I went all over the world, all over Europe. The only country I haven't visited yet is actually New Zealand and Chile for some strange reason.
Shall we get you an invitation?
I'm waiting for the invitation, yes. In these countries, I met wonderful people like the Sancerre family, the Bourgeois, Ziggy and Arnaud Bourgeois from Sancerre, Lydia Dagenot, Domaine Paul Blanc in Alsace, lots of people, Didier Barral, and they're all, I tasted wines with them, and of course in Argentina as well, Ashwal Ferrer. I just met wonderful people, and they made me taste old vine wines alongside young vine wines. And to me, I've always grasped the wonderful inner strength of these wines. For me, there's a distinct difference. I was completely mesmerized with the whole strength and character of old wines. And I came back to South Africa, and I thought, but Jan van Riebeeck was the first white guy that set foot here and planted vines in 1657. And I thought, but where's our old vines? They must be hidden away somewhere. And I started looking, got into my car, my bakkie, as you know, you've been with me. Oh, no, you have not been with me, my bakkie at that time. And I drove all over the country. I went up the west coast, up the mountains, up to Oudtshoorn for hours and hours over weekends, and found some vines. And then the word started spreading with the farm workers, which you know I work very closely with. And they said to me at some stage of their lives, 20, 30 years ago, there was an old vineyard there, an old vineyard there. So I started visiting these sites, and I found these beautiful old vineyards. And then, of course, the lucky break was when Johan Viljoen, a colleague of mine, told me about Skirpa. And, you know, the rest followed.
Yeah. And you then established this website called I Am Old. You're not old, but this site was called I Am Old. And you just did that yourself, but you had a list of vineyards, didn't you?
Well, at the time I was not old, yes. I approached Sarvis, our local authority here that regulates vines planted and wines produced at the time, because they could have easily given me the list of old vines, but they didn't want to. They deemed it as confidential at the time, so it was a hell of a struggle in the beginning. We had to literally find and phone, and it was not easy. But then at some stage, Andre joined. Andre started talking to me. We were just trying to figure it out about 2008, and after that, Sarvis gave us the list, and then it was easy. We actually had a list of vines older than 35 years registered. You can't produce wine in this country if you're not on that list. So Sarvis is a fantastic authority in South Africa. And then it was actually easy after that. It was much more easier to do the list. But the first list was I'm old. My friends Nadia and Andre changed that very quickly, saying it's a silly name. I thought it was a very, very good name, but obviously I was wrong. And now it was called the Old Vine Project.
Yeah, and one of the things I like that you've always done with these old vines, when you're given, or someone tells you about the old vines, is you're almost like a matchmaker, that you actually give the vineyard to a winemaker who you think deserves it in a way. Would that be accurate for me to say that?
You know, that is how it started. I was very jealous and possessive of my old vines in the beginning. But when Eben Sari made the first wine, the Skurfberg Chenin, and Neil Patterson at the time when I was working also at Lourmarin in Franschhoek, also produced the wine from Skurfberg Chenin. And I think that set the standard. After that, it was almost as if Skurfberg was just such a beautiful wine, the standard was set. And years later, now people have to live up to that standard. And it's not easy. I think the winemakers regulate themselves. You know, if they produce wine from old vines and it's not a good wine, they don't bottle it. But most of the old wines that we see today in South Africa are actually really good wines.
Yeah.
But Andre will tell you more about that.
Okay, we'll come on to him in a minute. Tell him to sit out of the photo, out of the picture, till his time is ready. I mean, South Africa is a challenging place to grow grapes. I mean, not just because of the climate, but also because of virus issues and other things. Why do some vines survive and others not? When which varieties tend to do best, do you?
Well, it's a very good question. I think often sentimental reasons. You know, if your grandmother or your grandfather planted the vine during the Anglo-Boer War, even before the First World War, and you wanted to keep the memory of them alive, you kept the vineyards. I go to so many farms where people say, but why don't you take it out? And the farmer will say, well, my grandmother, Auntie Cookie, planted it, or whatever her name was, and they don't want to take it out. I think that's the one reason, but I do think the other reason is just because it produced good quality wines. I think over the years, the winemakers every year from the co-ops, at that time, the wines were mostly produced by co-ops. The co-op said, don't take it out, it just gives so much more acidity, so much more inner strength to our bulk wines. And they kept it. I think the best vineyards survived because they produced the best wines.
I mean, some of them were in very isolated places, aren't they? Like the footpad, where they were used to make hooch, to make spirits, and that's why they survived, right?
That's right. Sometimes they were just also produced, kept because the farmer got a quota from KWV towards the end. So that was, Andre, don't interrupt me, please.
Yes, tell him to shut up.
I think that's also why, but it's mostly because they produce lovely wines, I think. For example, at Skurfberg, strangely enough, the first time I got to Skurfberg, I spoke to the winemaker at the co-op at the time, that was 15 years ago, 14 years ago. The winemaker said they don't like the grapes from Skurfberg because the acidity is so high, it eats away at the bin on the inside. I mean, that is ridiculous. The one thing we do want in South Africa is high acidity because of our heat. We normally have low acidity, lower acidity, but we have other things to replace it.
I mean, tell us about farming old vines, because I know you're quite emotional about it, but you're also very analytical, and you form these teams. You have a team of pruners and vineyard workers who specifically work on these old vine sites a lot of the time. Just tell us about how you treat. Do you have to treat them in a different way?
Yes, you do. Old vines must be farmed with a lot of attention. Correct pruning is very, very important, and I'll talk about that just now. Weed control and soil health. I know soil health is a very, very important subject in a dry country like ours. And of course, the previous speaker mentioned biodiversity. That's very close to my heart. So soil health and biodiversity is a very important part of that. I think purity of air and romantic things like that also plays a role. That's maybe why Skurfberg is so great and the Voetpad is so great, because it stands in the middle of nowhere. There's nothing around it but wheat or fynbos and leopards and cows and sheep sometimes. So maybe that plays a role in the biodiversity. If you have a biodiverse vineyard, you use less insecticides, and that's of course helps with the vineyards. We try to fertilize them with organic fertilizer, definitely not with hard chemicals, and we always try to keep smaller canopies rather than pushing vigor with fertilizer. A lean vine can run further in a heat wave. We believe also that old vines will tell you how to manage them. There is no definite recipe for old vineyards.
If you know how to listen, right?
Yeah, you just have to stand back and listen to it, and it will tell you what it needs. Just look at it and try to put yourself in their shoes. I mean, they've been there for hundreds of years, and they reflect the seasons and the past climates through their grapes. They're self-regulating. So if you come to a vineyard and you have to prune it, look at it, see what the yield was the previous year, and never prune into old wood. I know in California and in Europe, that cut with loppers and all sorts of things into old wood. We don't do that here at all. We believe in only working with the strong wood, the healthy wood, and recreating the vine from the strong wood. And we have done that. We have done that many times here, and it works.
Is that something that you've developed, or was it something you learned from people like Evan Archer?
No. That's something I learned with my farm workers, the guys that work with me, by looking at vines. We just looked at it and I said to them, if you were that vine, how would you want to be pruned? That's literally what we've done. And it really, we sometimes recreating a new vine from a vine that's almost dying. There's one piece of wood that has life. And we're recreating a new vine from that one shoot.
I mean, last question, it's more of a comment really. I mean, whenever I'm in vineyards with you, I love the fact that you have this incredible intuition. It's almost like you have an emotional connection with the vine. I mean, it's that Sandborg was talking about, I don't grow vineyards, I don't farm vineyards, I farm vines. You know, I've seen that with you where, you know, you're almost, I mean, you're very emotional about the connection sometimes. Is that true?
Yes. I prepared an answer for you because you've seen me this before.
No, just tell us, don't read out.
I had to think about this so carefully, and this is very true. Old vines, and Skurfberg in particular, you've been to Skurfberg with me. It is just a magical place. It is just so magical. they linked me to my history, to my ancestors, and to all the people that work the land in these fields for sometimes 100 years, sometimes 130, 140 years. People work there, and I can feel it. I think it gives one a sense of security, a sense that we can survive the most taxing of times. And this is a very emotional statement, I know. But I sense that when I talk to people with old vineyards, even the farmers and the farm workers, they say, if they could have survived even in the most taxing of times, why can't we? Just hang on. Just don't give up. And of course, it humbles you and it makes you emotional. And that's why I love old wines. That's one of the reasons why I love old wines. Also because they produce wonderful wines, of course.
Yeah. I mean, when we were at Barcy, I'm glad you're drinking as well. Fantastic. There we go. I hope you're drinking an old wine. That when we were at Skurfberg with Barcy and we went up to the top of the farm, and you can still see where the Boers during the Anglo-Boer War used to sit on top of this mountain and look all along the west coast to see when the Brits were coming. And you can find old gun, casements. You can find tins, old tins they used to eat. And you're connected, as you said, to history and a history of struggle. I mean, South Africa is a very powerful place.
I think there's a saying. I know Nelson Mandela, the great Nelson Mandela, said it once, that you don't know where you're going if you don't know where you're coming from.
Yeah.
And I think, in a sense, old wines gives you that. You can just learn from them, and you can just sit back and respect them.
Yeah.
And not interfere too much. Don't work them too hard, and don't try to manipulate them too much. Just go lightly.
Yeah.
Tread lightly.
Go lightly. I love that. Thank you, Rosa. Fantastic. Now, what's going to happen? We're going to swing round to Andre. Is Andre going to join us in the hot
Yes,
seat?
I'm going to leave my seat, and Andre's going to join my seat.
Lovely to see you. Hello, Andre.
How are you doing?
Good to see you.
How's it?
Right, Andre's going to tell us a bit more about the Old Wine Project. I just want you to tell us. I mean, Rosa told us a little bit about the I Am Old and how that started. Just tell us about how the Old Wine Project specifically started. Who funds it? Who runs it? How many members do you have?
Well, as Rosa explained, this has been going on for almost 20 years now. I mean, people always talk about. We started in 2016 in August when Marissa approached me and said that she received funding from Mr. Rupert, seed funding to start the Old Wine Project. They've been talking about that for many years, and it went from there that in 4 or 5 years, you talk about members, we were, before lockdown, 70 members. When we started in 2017, we were 8 members.
Yeah.
And Nadia tells us this afternoon that it looks like we'll be at 100 members by the end of the month, which is
because of this conference. Amazing, the power of this conference.
Well, I'll have to thank Sarah and yourself and Madeleine for the conference. Marissa and I have been talking about this for quite a while to do something similar, but COVID, didn't work out for us, and I think this is a valuable opportunity for us to tell our story.
And just tell us what impact OVP has had on the South African wine industry. I mean, Rosa was saying this story that a lot of the best vineyards were locked inside cooperatives, and even if the co-ops knew they made good grapes, they didn't always make the wines on their own. How you've done an amazing job with this project. How has it changed thinking in South Africa?
Well, thank you for that. And as you might remember, you were one of the first itineraries that I developed when I was still with Wines of South Africa in 2001, I think. And
I am old.
And so you never really saw the carbs, and I think recently, which was significant for us, is when we at Rissa's home showed you a lineup of carb old vine wines. When I, 4 years ago, started going to the co-ops, and 85% of our old vineyards are tied up in those systems. I don't know if you know what it is to go and talk to a farmer, which is the director of a co-op. It's like this.
And he's probably 6'4" and used to be a Springbok second row or something like that.
So, I mean, to break through that system is almost impossible. And we are lucky to have, I think, Nadia, 5, 6 major cooperatives as members now, which number one started their own old vine wines, which you've tasted, and secondly, they've unlocked vineyards to our members, and we are saving vineyards. Just to look at the figures, I mean, we started with just under 3,000 hectares of old vine vineyards. In the last couple of years, it increased by almost 1,000 hectares. So let's say 3,500 hectares is, or 3,600 hectares is currently part of the 90,000 of total. That's a very small percentage, but we're growing it, and we're getting the sentiment through to people to keep the vineyard in the ground and respect the vineyard, as Rosie explained.
And are you seeing higher prices both for old vine fruit, but also for old vine wines? Particularly, tell us maybe after that a bit about the seal and how you market it. But tell us about the prices of fruit and of the wines, first of all.
I've got a beautiful story to share with you to illustrate that. When Melissa arrived in Skurfberg the first time, she met with Henk Lang. The family was destitute, they were desperate to make money, they were pulling out vineyards, planting fruit that was higher yielding. And he just said, since Rosa arrived and started selling grapes to Eben Sadi and the Malinies and Alat and so forth, and even more after that, they increased the grape price per ton from roughly 2,000 Rand a ton to the co-op, and is now 10, 15, 20,000 Rand a ton. So it's not the golden bullet, but they can buy a new tractor. And the beautiful story of this is that they've managed to put the kids through university with old vine money.
Yeah,
so it has an impact on grape prices, and that's one of the challenges that we had from the beginning, is to develop a business model that is workable and sustainable for the growers and for the workers on the farms. And then in terms of wine prices, Jonathan Stein is running a research project by UCT GSB, and the first round proved that people are willing to pay more per bottle, an average of 300 Rand a bottle, if it says old vine on the front label. The current research is about the seal.
Tell us about the seal.
The seal is probably the most important aspect of the Old Vine project in South Africa, because it's the only thing that differentiates us from everybody else. There's no one else who can actually have the traceability, as Rosa explained with Salvas. Our planting dates, it goes back to 1900. We can trace each vineyard when it was planted, and that gives the consumer an idea of the quality of the wine, and as I said, traceability, and the authenticity. That's the most important part of it. That gives us teeth.
And what about this? The age limit, 35 years is your definition of an old vine. That would be deemed quite young if you if you were in Spain, for example, or maybe on Etna, where Salvo was talking. How did you come up with 35 years?
That's ironic that South Africa took the lead and created the category with 35 years. But when I was at Provine 2 years ago, I had the privilege to walk to my counterparts in each country. Nadia and I were joking. I would say, okay, I'm just leaving Australia now, on the way to Chile, and she said, I'm still in Paarl. and I had meetings with I think Stuart's talking about Lodi tomorrow, Barossa, Wines of Australia, Napa, Portugal, Spain, and the agreement was that 35 years is sort of when a vineyard comes into balance. And I always use the analogy of when we were students in our 20s, we never thought that we'll reach 30. And once you reach your 30s, then in theory, some of us get it right. We'll have a family and a career, and drive with the dogs on Sunday, and not be partying the whole weekend in discos and so on. So that's what we see with old vines. That's what we decided in 35 to 40 years, where we had to pin it somewhere, to shape the category.
I mean, last question is, you've spoken to all these people at Provine when Provine still happened 2 years ago. How do you think there's a possibility, maybe growing out of this conference, to establish something globally where all of these local or national organizations are linked in some way?
This discussion was at Provine with everybody, that we want to do something international. We are looking at something in South Africa when things ease up. that we can have international visitors, winemakers, taste international wines, and discuss similar sort of format. Yeah, so internationalization has always been on the books, but it's been difficult the last 2 years to actually realize.
Fantastic.
But international cooperation is important for us. We feel that all the noise is important around old vines.
Yeah.
Even though we started it and we're leading it with the seal and everything, but we want to work together with everybody else.
Fantastic. So watch this space, yeah? Fantastic. All right, great to talk to you guys. Sarah, back to you. Sorry, we're just a little bit over. We started.
No, Tim, wonderful. Proper journo, proper journo skill. And can I just say, I know that Tim spent all weekend preparing and being on it, of course. So thank you. We've got a few questions. Andre and also maybe Rosa would like to come in on them as well. A question that's been raised both by Beverly Blanning and Jackie Cook, which is around the evidence, if any, that old vines are better equipped to deal with drought or the broader effects of climate change. Do you think old vines are better equipped to deal with drought and climate change?
Without a doubt. Without a doubt. Most of our old vines in South Africa are dry land farmed. So they have no irrigation whatsoever, and they're bush vines. They survived, I think, in a way, because they're bush vines, because they never pruned too hard. But they are definitely better equipped to deal with the drought and the climatic stresses here, the cold winters, the extremely hot summers, and the drought. I've hardly ever seen an old vine that dies because of drought. It seems to just produce less because it's self-regulating. It reads the seasons.
Yeah.
It understands the seasons. It has a memory of the past seasons, and it deals with that in that way.
Yes. Fantastic. And actually, that idea of this memory isn't fanciful. We have attending Dylan Grigg from Adelaide in Australia, and he's done this research paper which is really fascinating on the epigenetic adaptation of vines. We've got that up on the site actually. I really recommend for people who are interested to read that.
I hope Dylan's still awake. It must be about 1 o'clock in the morning, isn't it?
He was here. He might have sort of fallen asleep over his old vine Grenache by now. But and Rosa, another question, a bitty question. Matthew McCulloch, from your pruning comment regarding old wood, is vine trunk disease an issue with South Africa's old vines?
Definitely it is. In some areas in our country it's worse than others. Where there's of course more rain, it's a bigger problem. Some varieties have a bigger problem with woodborne diseases, like Sauvio Blanc and Cabernet Sauvignon. For me, if I cut into old wood, where do I know does the disease stop and where does it start? So I just leave it and it will grow slowly, but I don't think you can stop it completely. I don't like to make big pruning wounds near the heart of the plant, which is near the soil, because the moment you make a big pruning wound, you reintroduce new woodborne diseases.
Yeah. And actually picking up on that, Matthew, we have a speaker tomorrow, Marco Simonit from Simonity Cirque. And do you know Marco? He actually has the Vine Master Pruners Academy. Now, if you are at all interested in actually understanding like the soul of how vines live and grow, you can actually sign up to do his beginners online course.
Yes, I did a talk with him in Spain 3 years ago, and we agreed to disagree.
Oh, did you? Oh, sorry.
That's unusual of you, Rosa.
It works in other countries, but it doesn't work in South Africa. The people always say that the South Africans think they're different. Well, in this instance, maybe it's true. If we cut back, I have done it. I've cut back into old vines here, and I nearly killed them. I know. But we have treated lightly, like with Henk Lang, with Bosie van Loo up in Skurfberg. I pruned lightly, softly, and gently. and they just blossom, and they are so grateful. It's a very rewarding thing to resurrect an old vine by working lightly. Cutting back hard, dominating the vine, I'm sorry, I don't believe in it.
Okay. And I think one of both the excitements and the challenges is in building a kind of a global category is that we have to allow for the very localized terroirs and cultures of each place. But that doesn't detract from the messaging. And what we will be looking to achieve today, actually, or start to achieve today, so that we can find some shared messaging. You've obviously done a fantastic job and great research proving the economic viability of old vines. And I do a lot of collective marketing. And the way I think about this project is it's like an uber generic marketing project. And although that can be challenging, I think it will also be really rewarding. So we're just going to sum up with a kind of, from our perspective, what we want to do next, summing up of today. And so I think my fellow Old Vine Conference founders are going to join me. Rosa and Andre, I just wanted to thank you so much for being here and for everything that you've done. Really, it's been a benchmark, and I know it's taken decades. So, you know, really inspirational. Yeah.
Sarah, if I may, it's not just Melissa and I, it's literally a lot of people that's been helping us from the beginning. If we couldn't have done this, as I mentioned earlier, if we didn't get the seeds funding from Mr. Rupert that had the vision to make this a reality, and then the Chenin Blanc Association in South Africa, with their very first meeting on the agenda. Ina Smith told me the other day, she's a doyen of Chenin Blanc in South Africa. She said on their first agenda, high up, number 2 I think was old vines. And they did the first research before we even started with University of Stellenbosch on the aroma wheel in terms of old vines, to distinguish what's the difference between the aromas of old vine and young vine Chenin. And following that, Professor Berger at University of Stellenbosch also did research on old vine pilotage, and we are currently looking at old vine Chenin research in genetics as well. So there's a lot of people involved in this, along with our very loyal members that's supporting us. So it's not just the 2 or 3 of us, it's a lot of people that's been involved in the last 20 years.
And a lot of scientists. We have a lot of research going in South Africa at the moment on different subjects to do with old vineyards. And let's be realistic, before the old vine projects, before I even thought about old vines, Mark Kent produced his most beautiful Buchanan's Close Senior from that 100 old year vineyard in Buchanan's in Franschhoek, and even sorry made Curtis Kirsten. So, you know, it's been a lovely ride for us, and we have a lot of support, and a lot of farmers joined the Old Vine Project. We're very happy at the moment. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And I think, you know, maybe in another 10 years we'll have a global old vine category. But the thing is, what we do now will ensure old vines in 50 years' time. So it's a culture, because you plant them not for 20 years, but for your lifetime. And it's that culture that changes, and to explain and have that culture valued, I think is transformative in so many ways. And you've really shown how it can be done, I think.
Sarah, I think that's a very good point. We used to
Leo, could you mute yourself, because you keep coming up on the screen? Thank you very much.
What I'm trying to say is, what we realized very soon in the project is that it's not only about old vines, it's about planting to grow old. It's actually, as one of the speakers earlier said, for the future, that you can actually plant a vineyard that can last 30, 50 to 100 years if you pair the certified virus-free material with the right rootstock on the right site, and then the pruning is of course important.
Plant to grow old.
Yeah. Vine is for life, not just for Christmas.
Not just for Christmas.
Fantastic. Okay, so I think we're going to start to wrap up. I have one more question for you, Rosa. Rosa, this is from Dennis, who otherwise known as Artisan Swiss. And Dennis's question is, what do you think of Fauzi Issa's plan to go with no pruning on the newly discovered?
I loved his presentation. I like what he said a lot. I really respect his vision. I don't. For me, I'm romantic, but also very practical. Vineyards must be sustainable, and wild vineyards do not really produce enough to make them sustainable in South Africa at the moment. But if you can have a large enough farm and you have wild enough spaces, it would be fantastic to produce wild grapes from wild vines. But you know, at the end of the day, it's the farmer must survive economically. It has to be sustainable. That's why it's so important for me not to be just overly romantic about old vines, but to actually give the farmer more money in his pocket to be able to survive and to be able to pay his farm workers more.
Yeah, absolutely. You have to change the economic model. It's the only way they will survive. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Thank you, Rosa and Andre, for being here and everything you do. Thank you to all of the speakers, Elias, Fauzi, Zell and Simone. Can I also thank my colleague Madeline, who's done so much work behind the scenes. Thank you, Madeline. And also, hi Elia. So please do check the networking on the website. And also, I think from us, the co-founders at the Old Vine Conference, we just wanted to share with you what we want to do next, and also to really say who's with us, because you heard what happened in South Africa. It's a huge group effort. You need everybody to come together, but also you can hear the rewards. You can change the economic model and end up with something truly beautiful and valuable and regeneratively valuable. So I think I'm going to introduce Leo. Would you like to come back? I'd like to introduce Leo Austin, who was the person who basically I kind of convinced into sort of doing this. Thank you, Leo. And I think over to you.
So, can you see me, Sarah?
Yes.
You can.
Yes.
Good. So we hope this is the beginning. Throughout my life, I've always focused on making sure things change on the ground, facts of the realities, rather than just having nice meetings. And it's been a fantastic start, but we need to do a heck of a lot more to support Rosa and Andre and everyone else who is passionate about old vines around the world. So we hope to create this organization together with all of you. So we need you to guide what the organization does as it supports the growers and the winemakers and the champions. What we know we're going to do is we're going to work with wine lovers, the media and the channel. We're going to begin to get the noise up to a completely new level around the world, and we hope to start the discussions on creating a real old wine category when the wine is sold. Now, we're going to have to raise money to do that, to support the sector, and capital can make a difference. Finance loves wine, and there are environmental, social, and governance allocations that we can access. I wear that hat with several other charitable causes. The very first thing to do is to start to make this real amongst influential wine consumers, and we hope to hold old wine tastings for wine lovers in key cities around the world to follow up the